Well, good. It seems like we might have lost some people this evening, huh? That's all right. Well, we only have one session left this evening, but it's actually worked out very well that we're starting the very first session in the second set this evening, because you're probably going to have some questions when I'm done and things that you want to think about and talk about with your team before we actually then proceed and do a few of the other aspects of conception. It's the most important part. Like June was telling you earlier, this is the heart of the material, what we're getting into now. So let's get started. So this is the process that we're going to be going through, and it's an outline really of the next 6 sessions. It's all right here on this slide. And so we're going to be going through, now I can't read it, but we're going to be going through what do they say? What's the first one say? Mission. What's the second one say?
Core values.
Core values. What's the third one?
Target group.
No. Yeah. Oh, okay. 4. Vision.
I can translate all of them.
No. I don't. I know you know them. Okay. So then, what's the bottom one? Oh. What is it? Huh? What's number 5? Disciple making pathway, and then what's the blue one on the left? In English? Shared vision. Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah. No, I don't. Well, it's too small. I can't read it. So, yeah. So that's the process. So these are the next 6 lessons that we're going to be giving. So we'll start with mission tonight. And then we'll be going through those next 5 all tomorrow. And so there'll be a lot to discuss. There's going to be a lot of work to do as well in your church planting teams or your ministry teams that you came with. So, well, what we're going to look at here is, what is the mission question? And in order to figure this out, you obviously need to look in the Bible, but you want to be able to answer the question, why do we exist? Not why does the church exist in the big C, but why do we exist? This specific church, uniquely. What is our purpose that God has for us in the world? And that's what we're talking about. And the answer to the question is going to flow out of the Great Commission, which is the mission of the church given by Jesus. Most people would use that in some way. So we're going to be talking about developing mission statements. And your mission statement for your organization, for your church, should be 3 B's: biblical, brief, and broad. Sounds simple, but it's not as simple as it sounds when you actually sit down to try to write out a mission statement for your church or a mission statement for your organization. You want it to be an umbrella statement, a statement that sort of covers everything. It communicates the direction of the ministry of your church. So there's a unique aspect to it. I'll get to do vision tomorrow as well, which I'm very passionate about, and I think there's a huge difference that needs to be understood between mission and vision. And I would articulate that generic church is absolutely boring. Okay? Generic church is boring, okay? Churches should not look like each other. They don't, but sometimes we try to make them look like each other. We copy each other. We try to follow some very specific blueprint, and that all churches should look like this. So I don't think that that's the way God puts churches together, because He uniquely gifts us, and He puts unique passions in us, and He puts us in specific places, and He brings before us specific needs that our church is going to work to meet. So that will all come out more in vision. But even in your mission statement, as you put it together, even that little exercise we did at the end of the last session I led, where you had to come up with a Bible verse that you're passionate about. And most church planners, most pastors, most people in ministry, they have a life verse or a ministry verse or something that really communicates what's on their heart from the Lord. And that'll go into the way you write your mission statement out as a church planting team or a church planting pastor. And so most churches, though, are going to build on Matthew 28, 19 to 20 in some form. So Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. And behold, I'm with you always till the end of the age." The Great Commission, right, the last message from Jesus to his apostles and by extension to his church. So most churches, when they write mission statements, they are going to use the language from this some way. They're going to reformulate it to come up with a mission statement. And like, do churches typically have mission statements in Slovakia? No. Do businesses have mission statements? They do? Some do. And do those mission statements really guide their organizations well? No? They don't follow them? They don't know them? Maybe not. So I'd say many churches in the U.S. have them, but nobody knows what they are. Often. That's very, very common. Because that goes to shared vision, the last of those 6 things. And we talk about shared vision. I'll be doing that one as well. Talking about how you make sure your people know it and they understand it. And more importantly, that they actually live it and embody your whole purpose as a church. So your purpose, your mission, is why you exist. So let's look at a little bit. These illustrations might be helpful to clear up some confusion. So as June mentioned, we want you to use here at least the terminology the way we use the terminology, okay? So some people use mission and vision the opposite way we do. So we see mission on the top as a very simple, biblical, bold, brief statement that is an umbrella statement for why you exist, what's your purpose as a church. It's usually a reformulation of the Great Commission in some way, or whatever you're interested in to use as your biblical base. But vision is a much more detailed working out of the preferred future that you see for your church as its leader or its leadership team. And that description could be a few sentences to a paragraph to a couple pages, or even more, although I would argue to keep it brief, but a couple pages just describing, hey, if God were to bless our church and money were no object, what would we like our church to look like in 10 years? That's usually how I ask the question for churches in the U.S. If money were no object, because that's usually the problem for American churches, if money were no object and God just blessed what he laid on your heart, what would you want your church to look like in 10 years? Describe that to me. And so as the pastors and leadership teams, elder boards or whatever, start describing that they're describing vision. So that's the difference. Now some people, when they talk about mission and vision, will use them the opposite way. So you may have heard it the other way, where vision is the big picture piece and mission is the small piece. But we don't use it that way. We use mission as the big piece and vision as the very specific piece, okay? So that's how we're going to use those terms throughout the course of this presentation with you. So let's clear this up a little bit. So this slide might help a little bit. Mission is a short purpose statement that can be written in a brief sentence. A vision is a longer page, in quotes here, because it might not be one page, but a longer page describing what the ministry will be like in a future time, your preferred future. And again, we'll talk more about that later. But that's the difference. So let's look at a couple other examples that might help. So if you were to look at Jesus' ministry, for example, mission versus vision, okay? So here we're going from general to detailed, okay? So in general, Jesus, right, in Luke 19:10, the centerpiece of the Gospel of Luke, is the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost, okay? That Jesus just summed up his ministry in one sentence. That's his mission. That's why he came. That's his purpose. He came to seek and save those who are lost. Okay, now a vision, he also talked in other places in much greater detail about what he came to do. So, for example, in Luke 4, when he begins his ministry, people ask about him. He quotes basically Isaiah 61, and he says, the poor will have good news preached to them, the prisoners will be freed, the blind sight will be given to the blind, the oppressed will be released, and celebrating the year of the Lord's favor. This is a quotation really from Isaiah 61. But you can see that's a very detailed list that fills out how this mission statement is going to look when it actually gets completed. So that's one way to look at it, general to specific. Another one, if you look at Moses, for example, here, we're just going through these quickly, you can see this mission statement talks about an overriding purpose. What was Moses' ministry about? Bring my people out. That's what it was. That's his job. That's his purpose. That's the reason for his ministry in Egypt, right? But there's more to that in the vision statement as Moses lays before the people what their future is going to be and describes it to them and gives them a promised land vision that was promised by God with good land and streams and water, valleys and hills, wheat and barley, vines and figs, pomegranates, olive oil, honey, where bread won't be scarce, lack nothing, rocks are iron, dig copper out of the hills, you'll eat and be satisfied, a land flowing with milk and honey. And it goes on and on and on. I mean, I recently just finished Deuteronomy and found those speeches very inspiring. Those are vision of what their future is. So that's, again, another difference. One is overriding purpose, get my people out of that land. The other is the vision, describing what the future is going to actually be like. Another example, early church. And so the mission might be something like, go make disciples of all nations. What's the purpose of the church? Many people would simply say, in some form, that's what it is. You're to go and make disciples of all peoples. But the vision, more specific in fulfillment, is another place where that's laid out for us is in Revelation 7. It talks about the great multitude that no one can count, every nation, tribe, people, language, and tongue. You know, you should be a nation of priests, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot in there in Revelation 7 where you see the difference between a very general description again and a very specific fulfillment of what the future is going to look like when the mission's actually accomplished. In this case, it will include all those people. So there are many other like parallel types of statements that Jesus gave that speak about mission. So for example, Mark 1:38, Jesus replied and said, let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages so I can preach there also. That's why I have come. That's why I have come. Again, it's the why question. Why? What's the purpose? And so then, you know, you'll notice that Jesus actually turned away people, needy people, in order to accomplish his mission. So, I mean, in Luke 5, for example, people are looking for him, and because they want to keep him for themselves, they want him to heal more people, they want him to provide more food, but Jesus isn't interested in doing that, so he's off praying. They can't find him because he has a purpose to fulfill. And we're going to talk about this in a second. You don't want your mission to be diluted and by other things that are good. And so he didn't come to just heal a bunch of people. He didn't come to just give people things that they want and need, like food. That's not why Jesus came. So mission clarity helps you make the tough decisions, the critical choices. And I'll give you some examples from my own life later on here. But mission clarity helps you make the tough, critical choices of direction for your ministry. Mission keeps you focused. That's the thing. Mission keeps you focused because people are going to try to drag your church in different directions. So you got to stay focused on what your mission is. And it's easy to add many good things. They're not bad things. I mean, most Christians don't add bad things to their church. They add good things. But the good is the enemy of the great, as someone once said. I don't remember who it was. But the good is the enemy of the great. So if you want to accomplish your mission and people start adding all these other things that you want to do, they could be programs, they could be initiatives, all these things, before you know it, you're not accomplishing your mission anymore. You're doing just a bunch of good things. So now let's talk about the importance of mission. And so anybody know who Peter Drucker is? Sort of a famous business guru. But he said, what matters is not the leader's charisma. What matters is the leader's mission. Because oftentimes people in most cultures are attracted to charismatic leaders. And charismatic leaders can be good leaders, but they also tend to be bad leaders. But people, the point is, people can't follow charisma very easily, very long. They can't follow it very easily, very long. I mean, so initially it can be very inspiring, but after a while, it just doesn't work. So let me give you an example from our community. So So there's this young church planner guy in my town, and his church is called Soma. Now, it's not really, I know some of you have gone to Soma training in Pacific Northwest of the U.S., right? Well, he didn't go to the training, but he likes the name and the website, so he thought he would just sort of take the name and call his church a Soma church, even though he's not part of the network and was never trained. Okay, no, there's ethical issues there, but we won't go there. So, anyway, so it's the Soma church in Lancaster, right? He's a young guy, good guy, nice family, but, he's charismatic. He's able to pull some people from this church that he used to be on staff with that for some reason got rid of him. And then he's able to pull some people from another church. They come together and they have this grand plan on how they're going to, of course, win the whole valley by themselves. And so, they start their church, and within a year, under a year, the church just sort of like stops growing, like boom, is done. And, people sort of start getting disenchanted. And the reason is because he didn't really have a clear mission. And then even worse than that, he didn't have anything but a motto. He didn't really have anything to present to the people other than just sort of these emotional appeals. But he didn't have any substance, strategic planning. He didn't have those 6 things we're going to talk about behind him. So his church just sort of went flat. And it's still there. Some of my friends attend there. But, it's like 40 people. But, it could have easily been a lot more. So, people can't follow charismatic leaders very long if they don't have anything behind it. You need a clear vision. So that's why Drucker says the first job of the leader is to think through and define the mission of the institution, okay, or the organization, if you like that word better, or the church, if you like that word better. It doesn't matter. They're all organizations. They all function similarly. So the next slide talks about the importance of mission. Some more. Don't ever forget that the first question is, what is the purpose or what is the mission of our church plant? The mission must come first. In business, this is the lesson for the last 50 to 100 years, Peter Drucker. The moment we lose sight of the mission, we're gone. So you have to keep it in the forefront or you're going to become something else. That's what I would say. Because the church will just sort of start morphing. Mission will leak. Mission drift, however you want to describe it. And before you know it, you're not really planting a church anymore. Or your ministry's not going in the direction you want it to. So you have to keep the mission in the forefront unless you become something else. So a couple other stories. So some of the church planners I've interacted with or advised or coached, there's two common problems that I run into, many others, but these are common. And one is that church planner and his team, nice small group of team, maybe 5 young families, they all have a similar heart for the city, and they go to some training on church planning, to a seminar maybe not unlike this one, and they go into their community, and they want to win the community to Christ. But they start realizing that they really enjoy each other a lot. And their kids are playing with each other. There's really good encouragement to each other. And so they start meeting more and more often in those contexts. And before you know it, they want a church. They don't want kids in their church that are going to take their kids in the wrong directions in life, be bad influence on them. They don't want certain people in church. They want certain other people in church so that they can create a Christian utopia. They want to create this nice, safe Christian community for themselves. And they might even find Bible verses to back it up. But they've lost their passion, their purpose, their mission. So they went out to plant a church to reach lost people. That's why you would plant a church. But they started turning inward because they were a small group of people who loved each other more than they actually loved their mission. Another problem is that I've run into is that people want to plant churches with too many people. And so, for example, this is a very recent story. There's a young Bible teacher at my kids' Christian school who's also an associate pastor at a fairly large church in town where I live. And he got a vision to go plant a church in this very rough part of Los Angeles. I mean, not gang type rough, but difficult in the fact that there are really no evangelical churches there. It's a stronghold of media moguls, but also homeless, but also hipsters, but also homosexuals, but also new young families. So it's this really weird, eclectic community. Sounds cool. I'd love to live there. But I said, so he wanted to meet with me because he heard I do these kind of things. So we went out to Starbucks, and I says, okay, so tell me your vision. What do you want to do? Tell me the mission. And he said, well, I'm gonna recruit 20 families from my church, and we're all gonna move 40 miles down to LA, and we're going to plant this church. Okay? And my first thing I told him is, well, why do you need 40 families? That's ridiculous. This church is pretty big. But I said, you know what's going to happen, don't you? I said, first of all, you will not convince 20 to 30 of whatever your 40 families are. You're not going to convince that many people to move, number one. But number two, even if you convince them to move, then you just took a bunch of people who are already Christians, moved them over here, put up your little cross on your building type thing, and you have another church. That's not church planting. You didn't save anybody. You just moved Christians. So that's not church planting.
That's moving.
It's moving. So I said, well, now tell me again what you want to do in this community. It's like, well, we want to win these people, and he knew the stats on the place. He'd done his research. I said, well, explain to me how you're going to actually do this. But it didn't work because often what happens if you start with too many people, well, then all of a sudden you set up church. So the church you came from, now you're just setting up another church that looks like the mother church, but you're not actually doing evangelism. So anyway, it can work, but of course, there are many models, but in this case, this would not work in this guy's life. I can tell you that. So anyway, he ended up getting commissioned. He was only able to convince 3 families, God's grace. And that was it. So that was perfect for him. And he's starting off, I think he'll succeed, but he's got a lot to figure out. But he did a really good job, though, of laying out on paper what their mission was. He thought through vision. He thought through the community, the target group that we'll be talking about. He thought through all those things. He's really good at creating a sense of vision with his leadership team. And so he's got all the pieces there. It's just he hasn't really figured out how to put it together. So I'm looking forward to, hopefully he'll let me work with him as we move ahead. So anyway, that's all to say that clarity in your mission is extremely important so that you stay on task. Otherwise, you're going to end up doing all these other good things, and before you know it, you're down the road a couple of years and you sort of missed what you set out to do. And that's why your mission is important. It just keeps you tethered to your purpose. So one illustration is the company Kodak. Do you know this company, Eastman Kodak? So anybody know what year it was founded? Offhand? Take a guess. It's 1888. It's a pretty old company. It was founded. So what business are they really in? That's the question. What business are they really in? Until the late 20th century, what would you have said? People would have said typically they're in the film business, meaning, photographic film, right? You take pictures of things, right? But if they really understood what business they were in, they were actually in the image business, not the film business. And had they figured that out earlier, they could have been a major business player. But I did some research on their financials, and they're doing image now. That's how they see themselves as an image company. But if they had thought about it earlier, right, they could have capitalized and made a lot more money.
They were way behind the curve.
Yep. Took them a long time to catch up. So now, so I've been through this process too. But there's all those people out there who say, well, the church is not a business. You think that's true? The church is not a business. People say that all the time, church people. Well, I'll just tell you what I think, then you can tell me if you think I'm right or wrong. But I think people who often say this, well, the church is not a business, is that they're basically often lazy. They're not interested in quality. They're satisfied with low quality, like bad coffee and stuff like that. So, and they often will use the Bible to hide behind. And they'll use verses to somehow say, the church is super spiritual and it's not a business. And they're like incompatible ideas. Well, that's not true. I would say the church is more than a business, but it's not less than a business. The church is more than a business. Of course, it's a spiritual organization, but it's not less than a business. I mean, don't you have a budget? Right? You manage things. You have goals you want to accomplish. You put together strategy. Of course, it's a business, right? But it's not just a business, right? So it's more than a business, but it's not less than a business. And so as Christians, we should not be afraid of looking at business paradigms. You can not use things if you don't want to, but they're very helpful. Most of us, if we're not in ministry, you work for a business or you own your own business, right? So you know how to operate organizations. Well, organizational leadership is organizational leadership wherever you find it. So anyway, that we can come back to that kind of a thing later. But so let's talk a little bit more about the ministry. It acts as a compass, mission does. Mission is to the ministry what a rudder is to a ship, a compass to a navigator, a template to a machinist. So it guides, it directs, right? A rudder helps guide your ship. A compass is going to direct which way you go, right? These things are going to help you keep course. So they also help you make strategic choices. Our choices are limited by the scope of our mission statement. So you've got to be able to say no to things. Because if you say yes to everything, then you're not doing anything, really. Because if you do everything, then you're not going to really do anything really well. You're not going to focus on it. So you have to make choices, and a mission statement makes your choices easier to make. For people, especially when you have to say no as the lead pastor or the church planner or the church planning team, because somebody may come up with an idea. Well, if you have a mission statement and you agree as a team, well, that doesn't really fit our mission statement. You can say no to the person, of course, in a nice pastoral way, but you can also explain to them what our mission is and what we believe God has called us to, and that's why we're not doing that, because if we do that, then we don't have the resources and the energy to really do what we're called to do. You see? And so as I mentioned before, the good is often the enemy of the great. And so if you want to accomplish your goals, you're going to have to be able to say no to things. So here's a major mission issue. This was a survey done by Rick Warren and Saddleback Church a number of years ago about mission drift and how easily it can happen to us. And so in this survey, the results among evangelicals in answering this question in America, what's our purpose for existence as a church? What's the purpose of your church? 11% said to win the world for Jesus or something like that. But 89% said the church's primary purpose is to take care of my family and my needs. That's a very inward-focused view. Fits America, focused on themselves. So, I mean, that's a radical drift from Jesus. In Matthew 28, he told us what our mission is. But yet, 89% of Americans think that the church exists to serve them, rather than that the church exists to win the world to Christ. So I'm wondering, if you took the survey in Slovakia, what do you think it would be come up with? You can figure that out. So anyway, going back to my story at my church that I replanted, we had a lot of pressures because we set out a very specific mission and vision for what we were going to do. And in the vision piece tomorrow, I'll talk about it more. But there were tons of pressures. We were rebuilding this church. We had a very clear mission and vision that we were going to accomplish. And then people would come up with all these other ideas. And they got the other ideas from all the other churches they've been a part of in their life. And they're thinking back, oh, when I was a part of, such and such a Baptist church, we did that and that worked. Maybe we should do that, Pastor. And then so on and so forth. I was at this church and this outreach program worked. Maybe we should do that. And so I had to say, no, we're not doing any of that. Why? I was nice, but why? Is because this is our vision. So shouldn't we have an Awana program? That's like a midweek, you know what Awana is? It's like a midweek children's program, right? So it's a big, big program in the United States and around the world in the middle of the week for children. Most churches in America don't even use it as an outreach program anymore. It's just another program to educate your own kids. And it sucks up all the ministry in your church. Everyone who's involved, eats all of your energy. You have no people left to do anything because they're all so busy running these kids' things. So I just said, no, we're not doing Awana. Said 3 other churches in town do Awana. If you want your kids to go to Awana, take them there. You know, that pastor is a friend of mine. He'd be glad to have your kids. Okay? No problem. I'm not going to raise an issue, but we're not running Awana. We don't need to. We got plenty of those around here because it'll take us off of our main focus. And people want to talk about vacation Bible schools. You know, I don't know if you know what those things are, but they're like summer programs, again, for children, and, running vacation Bible schools. And I said, nope, we're not doing vacation Bible school either. Unless you can prove to me it's actually going to be an outreach program and not just another program for you to educate the church kids, because the church kids don't need any more church education. Okay, they got you as parents, they got me as pastor, they get enough Bible, they don't need any more. Okay? So that's not why we exist as a church. We exist to reach the world, or whatever our specific vision is I'll share with you tomorrow. So I said, no, we're not doing VBS. And then all the ladies, they in the church, they're like, well, we want to have, there's this really nice tea outreach. And so we put on this tea event, and we invite a woman speaker in, and we invite friends to come to it, and we hold this event. By the way, I'm not necessarily opposed to any of these things, but they weren't part of our vision. See, that's the point. So they wanted to do all these things. And I said, no, we're not doing that. I said, because how much time is that going to take? It would take them months to plan it. Months. And it would eat up all of our high-quality female leadership in our church putting on a tea. Okay? I mean, tea might be good. I'm sure the speaker is a great Christian speaker. But I know that the people you're going to invite are probably going to just be other Christian ladies from other churches in town. And it'll be a nice fellowship group. Well, other churches have ladies' teas. Go to those churches for ladies' teas. But that's not what God called our church to do. Don't you remember why you signed up with us? Don't you remember why you joined this church? Let me remind you. This is our mission. This is what we're about. This is what we are called to fulfill. And, so there's all these types of things that go on and on and on. And I just picked on a few that are popular. But part of our mission statement was, we exist for the glory of God to plant churches there and here, not here and there. Most American churches say something like, well, I'll plant churches here and there, as if that's an order. We're going to do here first and there later, and they never get to there. So they'll only end up planting churches in their own country. So we said, no, we're going to plant churches there first, and then we'll plant them here second. Very specific. That's what we're going to do. And then we also, I reminded them, we had core values. We had 6 core values. I might share those with you tomorrow. But they're unique core values. And one of them has to do with providing only minimal programming at our church. This is part of our core values, which would feed our vision because of what our mission is. So if we want to fulfill this mission, to accomplish this vision, we have to have a strategic plan that's going to be reinformed by our values. And one of them was to have minimal programming. And so, yeah, we have nursery. If you show up on Sunday, we have a nursery for your child if you want to put in there. Great. Yeah. No, we don't run midweek programs. No, this is because this is what we do. And we have a very exciting vision we would lay out. So you want to be a part of that? That's what our church is about. We're about planting churches. And so it's really, really helpful to have a clear vision that you understand. And personally, I don't care if people memorize it or not. I could care less. As long as they know what it is and get close to it and understand what it really means in their lives. But mission statements, as we're going to see here briefly as we sort of wrap up the session, is the 3 B's. They have to be biblical, brief, and bold. So a mission statement, first of all, is biblical. There are many possibilities, of course. You don't have to just use Matthew 28. But we mentioned these other verses, Colossians 1:27 through 29. That was Steve's life ministry verse about admonishing and teaching all people to be complete in Christ. Luke 19:10, we just read that. The Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost. So there might be some others. Your Bible verses that we did a couple sessions ago, your passionate verse you're passionate about, that would probably inform your mission statement. And again, you're asking, why do we exist? It's not a theological question, okay? It's not. It's a practical, it's more of a philosophical, practical question. It's not a theology question about why do we as the church exist, okay? We're not asking that. We're asking, why do we exist? Your particular church planting team, this new church that's in your heart and mind. So what are we to always be about? That's the point of the mission. What are we to always be about? And so Here's another way to think about mission versus vision statements. So when it comes to mission statements, even though they're unique, as I've just been arguing, there's a sense in which they're interchangeable. Because most of them tend to be built on, for the church at least, for the churches, they tend to be interchangeable because they tend to be around something about, discipling people, something about going to people and evangelizing, something about, it's all these things, these purposes, these 3-4 standard purposes, and everybody comes up with a new way to say them. So they're somewhat interchangeable. So in one sense, I always used to joke with my pastor friends in the community, says, hey, how about we all just swap mission statements next year and see if anybody notices? Right. Because in some sense, they would. In some sense, they aren't interchangeable because they're a little bit unique, but they're general enough that another church isn't going to object to it, really, because you're doing the same general types of things. But vision are going to be totally different. So that's another way to think about it. But a mission statement is not a slogan. It's not that brief. It's not like, hey, love God and love people. That's not a mission statement. That's a slogan. Okay, that's a jingle. That's what you put on an advertisement. Okay, that's not a mission statement. So just to be clear on that. So they have to be brief. Oops, I did something wrong, I think. Let's see. No, there we go. So brief. The T-shirt test, it should be able to fit on a T-shirt, at least a 2XL or something. It should fit on, a good-sized T-shirt, But it's your primary communication statement. So you want to be using it frequently with people, right? And that's part of how you do the shared vision piece, which we'll talk about later. But the reason mission statements, I think, in some churches have fallen out of favor, in the U.S. at least, is because no one uses them. No one uses them properly, right? So they sort of laugh and say, yeah, we wrote our mission statement back when mission statements were popular, da-da-da-da-da. And so I just simply ask, well, so then why are you here? Why are you here? And then they have to answer the question. It's like, oh, that sounds like a mission statement to me. So you still have one, even though you're not following the one you wrote. But you have to have it because you have to know why you exist. So, but you want your leaders to remember it, of course, and propagate it. But it has to be brief. So here are a few examples. You may like them, you may not, but here are a few examples from some churches in our context, some ministries. One is Willow Creek. It's a big church in Barrington, Illinois. So it's our mission is to turn irreligious people into fully devoted followers of Christ. I visited the church. It's very clear this is part of their mission. Their mission statement is well known, and they know that that's what they're about, turning irreligious people into fully devoted followers of Christ. EFCA and Reach Global is to glorify God by multiplying transformational churches among all people. That's our mission statement. It used to be, right? So when we were part of it. WHF, to glorify God by multiplying healthy churches in the world. Okay, simple, memorable, right? It's brief, it's biblical. Whether or not it's bold, we can talk about that. Enclave Church, this is used to be Steve's home church. Enclave Church exists to be an expression of Christ to our community and our world. Our mission statement at Church Assistance Ministry is that we help the church multiply its impact in the world by providing leadership development services to the church. That's our mission. We exist to help the church multiply its impact in the world by providing leadership development assistance to the church, to churches. So those are some. So they're broad and balanced. It's an umbrella statement, so it has to somehow summarize everything. It has to be comprehensive and overarching. And like I said, this is harder than it sounds. If it's going to express really the heart of you as the church planner or your team. And so for the next 15 minutes, we're going to work on your T-shirts. And you're going to I want you to work in your groups. So like if your team is here, work with your team. If it's just you as a church planning couple, work as a couple by yourselves. If it's just you work on this, okay? So that you can actually think through it. Now, you're not going to get it done in 15 minutes, okay? You're going to get maybe a rough draft, and that's fine. That's all we expect. And you may have already done it. I don't know. And of course, if you aren't planting a church, remember you're planting an imaginary church, okay? So think through, well, if you were to plant a church, what would you want its mission to be? Its purpose for existence. And so I'll talk about this and wrap us up in a few minutes, but I want you to get in your teams if you're not already, and just get out a piece of paper.
Page 7.
What's that?
Page 7.
Page 7 at the end. MAP, you see a picture of a t-shirt, and it's what you see on the screen. Our mission is. And so just start drafting it, putting words together, and work on it for 15 minutes, put some thought into it, see if you think it's easy or hard. Okay, so let's stop now. I know you're not done. This is a complicated process. Although it looks like you're making some good progress. And so again, we don't expect you to have a perfect mission statement in 10 minutes, okay? And even if you had a perfect one and you thought, hey, this is awesome, we got it done, my guess is when you went to bed tonight and you get a good night's sleep and you wake up tomorrow morning, you'd want to modify it, because something else will come into your head. God will bring up some other purpose that you want to put in there. So it's a process, is what I'm saying, to put your mission statement together. And so all we expect you to do is have a sort of a draft, maybe some ideas. You might even just have phrases that don't quite fit together at this point. That's okay. But as tomorrow we go through the rest of these main sessions, we're going to constantly be referring back to the mission statement so that you can understand how mission and values and vision all fit together, and then help you come up with strategies and your target group and all these types of things, and how you communicate vision and these types of things. So since you worked in groups, I'd like to hear what you got. I know it's not perfect, but that's okay. We don't like perfection. We like process. So how about this group down here? Because I saw that you were actually writing inside the T-shirt, so I know it fits. So you want to read yours to us, what you got so far?
Should I read it in English or Slovak?
Can you do both?
Yeah, so, I'll try to translate it.
Okay.
So, we want to learn how to live 100% life through the example of Jesus and act accordingly.
Okay.
What's the last part?
And act accordingly.
Act accordingly.
So we want to live 100% for Jesus.
We want to learn how to live the 100% through Jesus' example,
Okay.
and then act accordingly. Not only learn, but act.
Yes. Learn and act. Okay. It's a good start. Any comments, Steve?
It's a little bit more process than
Yeah.
a result. You could state it a little differently by saying, our mission is to teach, and whatever your expression was.
Learn.
How to live to the 100%?
Yeah, because our church is to teach or communicate a kind of life that you talked about, rather than how you're going to do it, because that'll come later as you develop your strategy. You'll say how you're going to accomplish these kinds of things. But that's a great start.
No, I think it's an excellent start. So now you can read it in Slovak. Yeah.
Chceme sa učiť, ako žiť na 100% cez príklad Ježiša a podľa toho sa správať.
That's good. Yeah, thanks. I mean, I can obviously see some things that relate that are unique, like this 100% idea. I mean, that's something that's yours, That's good. Yeah. So that's specific enough, I think, for a mission statement. So that's really good. Yeah. Beyond.
This reminded me of the discussion that we had when we worked on something like this. Before this word, we want to be. What is your opinion about that? If you put it, we want to be, it is kind of safe.
Yeah, that's a safe way to do it.
It's not bold.
But in the same time, it's kind of communicating that we are not perfect.
Right.
Or it should be more like we will be.
Yeah.
It's more bold, but it's kind of, I'm really not sure if we will get there.
Well, then you can always add, by God's grace. And you can have, I understand, because sometimes, wanting to be bold makes you sometimes look like you're not humble. right? Yeah. Okay. Well, how about this table? You want to share? Or this table? Or the guys back there?
Like Paul's purpose statement is to present everyone complete in Christ. That was a bold statement.
Yeah.
To present everyone complete in Christ.
Yeah, Colossians 1.
That's pretty powerful and bold.
Good. Let's somebody else share what you thoughts are at this point. Anybody else got an imperfect one that they want to share?
Love God, love people. We thought that was really good.
What's that?
Love people.
Oh, was that your statement that I made fun of? Well, too bad. Well, it's a good motto.
Actually, we got it from Jesus.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't hear a chapter and verse though. But so it's a good motto, but it's not a mission statement anyway. So, mission statements, Kurt?
Why is that
Oh,
a
sorry.
mission statement?
Huh?
Why is that a mission statement? To love God and to love people.
Why is that not a mission statement to love God and love people?
Because that's a statement of action. It's not real specific as to how it's going to happen, but that's a statement of action, not what we are to become or to what the results will be.
What the accomplishment goal is.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So for me to say, the mission of our church is to teach the Bible well and to love the people of our community is more of a strategy statement, a brief strategy statement, rather than a mission that this is what our church is here for. Okay, we're not here for the strategy, we're here for the results of the strategy.
Right.
We need to think about the results of what God wants to accomplish through us. Does that make sense?
Yep.
At all? A little bit?
Can I say that the weakness of that statement also is that it's so hard to measure that.
Yeah.
There's no way to measure it and say, in 5 years, are we accomplishing the mission? Are we loving God? Are we loving people? Because there's no action there in the sense, or becoming, right? It's
You never know if you're corporately doing it.
yeah.
Do you find it helpful, Steve? I think it is, but do you find it helpful to compare a mission to like a military mission? So like, if you, I mean, it's a much more limited context and a time-bound type of thing, but it's like, okay, we're on operation, ABC, and the mission is to do this.
Yeah, capture that island.
And then when you've accomplished it, and it's very clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To capture the island that's occupied by enemy forces. That would be a mission for a brief military operation.
The soldier can understand it.
It has time preference, right? It has a time limit when your statement is like that.
What's that?
It has time limit.
That one has time limit.
Yeah.
And sometimes you will have a mission for a short-term project, but we're talking about the overall ongoing mission of our church. That probably won't change over time. What will change is how well we produce that or accomplish that.
And if we extended that military mission into our context, and we would say our mission is to win the world for Christ, it is something similar, but how do you measure?
Because, and that's, in my view, that would be a mission statement that would help us some, because if we live by it, we will be doing evangelism in various ways to accomplish that.
Yeah, but that's the vision then, how
Right. But it is so broad that you'll never do it. Win the world for Christ. One church is not going to win the world. One church is going to win a certain segment, I hope, of people but it's not going to win the world. All of us together, I hope, will move toward that. But we're talking about our local church.
But maybe the argument may be that, you know, what is in the Bible, and the people can say, okay, there is love God and love neighbor, and then there is like, be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the end of the world. And that is basically, if I will take only what Jesus said, kind of. You know, that some people will say, okay, what you are speaking about is really kind of influenced by business.
Well, I could just simply say, so which passage of Jesus are you going to use? I mean, he spoke thousands of words that are recorded, so you're not going to use all of them. So you somehow have made a decision on which ones you're going to pick.
How about the, you know, okay.
Right?
I can say that, okay, so, but Jesus never had the teaching like you have now, that you should have vision, mission, core values. He only basically spoke like Filipino, shared stories, at least what we have from the...
So you don't think the Great Commission is a commission? I mean, that's a mission statement right there. That's why we're saying usually churches base it off of biblical phraseology so that, like you said, people can recognize that, oh, I know that comes from these words of Jesus. I know that that's where that comes from.
But it's also not measurable. Like make disciples.
No. So you might define it more for your particular context, but they could still identify the phrases you're using so that you're not just making up something, you're pulling it from the Bible.
A mission statement could be, our mission is to produce disciples that make disciples that make disciples. That would be a mission. Okay? And that would define a certain kind of church that accomplishes ultimately a certain things. And so then your strategy will flow out of that. Acts 1:8 and Colossians 1 and other passages.
Well, that one in particular, 2 Timothy 2:2 is what people would identify that with,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. And that would be a multiplying.
But it's also clear enough that it's clear that you're about disciple making as a church, if you use that as your mission statement. Yeah.
But that would be a mission statement. That would be comprehensive enough for some churches to use. June's is a mission statement about church planting. When you have a mission statement that we're going to plant churches in the world, healthy churches in the world, that there's a lot of implications behind that. If we're going to continually plant churches, that we're going to measure our effectiveness by how well we fulfill that mission statement. We're going to have to do discipleship and evangelism and training our people and equipping people and so forth to get to the place where we're able to fulfill that. A mission statement doesn't say all the things we're going to do to get it done, but it says we're going to be a church planting church that multiplies church plants or whatever. But that's our mission. Once that's there, it helps keep us on track when 3 years from now we're in an elders meeting and we decide, well, we're going to build houses for people in poverty. Now, that could be this church planting thing in the broadest sense, but it probably would not fit our mission. There will be certain things we won't do that are very good things that some other churches might do and would be very effective at, but we're going to be planting churches or whatever. So it would help us to make decisions. Would this truly help us to fulfill the mission that God has given us?
Well, would this qualify for a mission statement then? That our mission is to be an image of God through multiplication multiplying churches that represent God.
Yeah, that's, you're coming on to a mission statement there. Okay. Well, you're coming on because you probably want to reword that just a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
But it is a mission statement.
Yeah, it's a mission statement. You just want to wordsmith it a little
It
bit.
is a mission statement. I won't criticize the words. But it is a mission statement because it talks about what you are all about. What you are all about as a church. Yeah. Okay? Am I making it muddier or?
No, I think that was really clear. That last example especially was clear. Well, we're gonna talk more. I mean, we're over time. Let's just, we'll talk more about this tomorrow. So you can keep thinking on it, put your questions together too for us. But I think once we hit values and vision, some of the stuff's going to be even clearer about what a mission statement is. So are there any final words of instruction, Tomasz? No? Should I just close in prayer? Okay. All right.
Back at the same time tomorrow.
Yep, same time tomorrow. All right. Well, let's pray. It's been a long day. So, Lord, we thank you for your faithfulness to us today. Thank you for helping us think well together and challenge and encourage one another to think more clearly. And I pray that as we leave this evening and come back for the next morning, that you would just continue to lay on our hearts the mission that we should fulfill in our particular church plants that we're working on. And we ask you to give us a good rest, and that you would again bless our time together tomorrow. In Jesus' name, amen.